So we're going to be talking about when the Battle of Britain took place. I've already done a longer video about that because there is still confusion about the dates and what would have been the best start date, what was the end date, what were the influencing factors that made the Air Ministry decide those dates. So that's all important. But essentially the Battle of Britain was fought between the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, and Royal Air Force between the 10th of July 1940 and the 31st of October 1940, or at least they're the official dates. So this is happening to prevent the Germans achieving aerial supremacy over southern England as an essential prerequisite to a seaborne invasion. And that's basically it. That's exactly what the Battle of Britain was about. And it wasn't just fought by Fighter Command, and we need to look at Coastal Command, Bomber Command, and the Royal Navy. I think looking at where the Battle of Britain took place is important because it's easy to think just in terms of London and the South East, but there was an immense amount of fighting over the West Country, for example, because there's a lot of aircraft factories in the West Country. Bristol Airplane Company at Filton, Parnell Aircraft at Yate, Westland Aircraft at Yeovil, and so on. And these were great targets. Portland Naval Base, Portsmouth, Southampton. It wasn't just about London, Kent, Essex and Sussex. Far from it. But London certainly was a primary target for the Germans for all kinds of reasons. So it goes without saying that there was an immense amount of fighting over London and the South East. But let's just not forget that the Battle of Britain was fought on a broad front, even as far north as Newcastle and Sunderland. So it's a huge, huge front. I think anybody who wants to know why the Battle of Britain was, and indeed remains, significant, needs to think about what was happening in the world at that time in the summer of 1940. France had fallen, the greatest military power in the world at the time, not Germany, France. A historic military power, catastrophic for the Western democracies that France had fallen. So Britain was the only base from which war against Germany could continue. All of the old states in Europe had fallen, and it was just Britain and its empire and Commonwealth. But it was only Britain that was under the bombs. Let's not forget that at that time. And the British people didn't falter or fail. They braced themselves to their duties and fought on. And that needs to be remembered. Somebody asked me which countries were involved in the Battle of Britain, and that's an interesting question because essentially it was fought between Britain and Germany, essentially, those two particular countries. However, the 1936 expansion plan of the Royal Air Force led to many adventurous and aviation-minded young men from the Commonwealth, New Zealand, Canada, Australia and so on, and there were American volunteers too. It was a multinational force. Then of course we've got the Poles, the Czechs, the Free French, the Belgians who are free and continue in the fight, and these people are absorbed into the Royal Air Force. So actually, when you think about it, there are many countries that are involved in this and are still very proud of that involvement. Absolutely no question. A multinational force. The Battle of Britain was triggered by unique, unprecedented circumstance of Hitler's lightning blitzkrieg advance to the Channel ports, which suddenly put London and the South East within range of the Me-109 fighter and of course his bombers. So this was extraordinary and this was unexpected that this was even going to happen. It was not part of the strategy at all. It was a surprise, the collapse of the Western democracies' armies in France and Belgium in the spring of 1940. So it was an absolutely unexpected and unique opportunity to invade Britain. So there they are, the Germans are on the Channel coast at Calais. Dover is 22 miles away, and what are you going to do? Well, obviously, a seaborne invasion, Hitler decided, was the best way to end the war quickly. Beyond any doubt, the system of air defence that was put in place by Air Chief Marshal Dowding and Air Vice Marshal Park was the best in the world. And it was misunderstood by the Germans because Luftwaffe air intelligence was demonstrably awful. And in fact, Jesenek, their intelligence chief, is probably the worst intelligence officer any country has ever produced. So they didn't understand radar, radio direction finding, RDF, which Dowding very far-sightedly built into the system of air defence to give advance warning of German formations assembling over the Pas-de-Calais, over Cherbourg, and advancing across the Channel, which then gave us a little bit more time to scramble our fighters and get them at least, up to height to intercept these formations. And it was incredible. Without radar, it would have been very, very difficult indeed to predict these attacks. So it was absolutely essential. Looking at the main objectives of the Battle of Britain, I mean, it's quite straightforward in a way from the German side. The Luftwaffe needed aerial supremacy over southern England as a prelude to a seaborne invasion. If you're going to send ships across the sea to disgorge troops, you must have aerial superiority. Look at D-Day, Operation Overlord, and the absolute Allied air superiority was immense, absolutely immense. And that meant that I think it was only Pips Priller, JG-26, managed to get up and strafe one of the beaches, but there was no Luftwaffe retaliation, no Luftwaffe protective umbrella for the Germans. I mean, none at all. So that was the objective from the German point of view, and it was absolutely essential that they won that aerial superiority and wrested it from fighter command. No question. From the British perspective, the objective in the Battle of Britain was to resist this Luftwaffe onslaught, which was aimed at achieving aerial supremacy over southern England to support a seaborne invasion. So the fact that fighter command really had to hold out, it wasn't even about defeating the Germans. I mean, that wasn't it. But defeating their aerial offensive, certainly, and holding out, that was the thing. Holding out, staying in the game, buying time to see what was going to happen with Russia and the Nazi Soviet non-aggression pact, and whether America would continue pursuing isolationism from events in Europe or come into the war on Britain's side. So holding out, that was really the thing. I think the importance of the Battle of Britain, without a doubt, is that it kept a foothold for the Western democracies in Western Europe. Because all of the old states in Europe had fallen, only Britain remained in Western Europe. Yes, we know Britain had an empire and a Commonwealth with Australia, Canada, New Zealand, etc. Absolutely fantastic resources to be able to draw upon. But they were a long way away. And it took time to get those resources to Britain, but it was only the British people who were under the German bombs. So the fact that Britain remained in the war was essential, because then, when America eventually came into the war, there was a base from which the liberation of Nazi-occupied Europe could be launched from. Without that, game over. That's how important the Battle of Britain was.